Do do do. Oh shit! I just started and realized I had no tune to the Mission Impossible theme song. It's like do 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 do. I was gonna do like the Space Jam pump pump up. I have
You
no
did
idea
not.
what any
You
words
did
are.
not have the Mission Impossible.
Imagine here. I'll create a picture for the audience. Imagine a wire is on fire and it's going down, and you hear the Mission Impossible theme song pumping from the heavens. And in the middle, they go, Lucas and Zack podcast. Then it goes back to the theme, and then there's an explosion. That's what this beginning was supposed to be.
Nice. Boom.
Thank
What's
you.
up, folks?
Yeah.
We are back. I forgot to tell you on our last episode, which, oh my God, Zack is not dead. Zack has not been arrested for crimes against Muppets. He is not.
Oh, I have, but I'm still here.
I had a long extended bit that I was going to do when you're not there about how you were arrested for like molesting Muppets because you kept trying to put your hand inside them so you could hold them.
Horrible.
So you could hold them like puppets.
Like
and I was like, this is not a good joke. So I decided
I'm glad
not to
you cut that out. But you still said this on the air.
Yeah, but I said this. I said this when you. I said that no, because it is different because I said it's a bit that was failed, and then we decided not to do. And I was going to make a joke about Zack and puppets, and always trying to put his hand inside them because that's the only way you work puppets. But then I was like, Zack should be here if I say this terrible thing about him, and so he is.
No, you just don't need. That makes you look bad, not makes me look bad.
I'm not saying it makes me look good.
The quality of the joke, the crassness of the idea.
It was not a good joke. I'm not saying it was like brilliant or anything. It was thoughts. I was struggling, man. I had no. My podcast partner ditched me last minute. I had a guest. Bar was great. Thank you to Bar. And I then forgot in the end of the episode to tell you that next month, July, we would be doing spy movie openers, or like the start
of the great opening of me doing the Mission Impossible scores flawlessly. That's why I did this.
If you have not realized we're doing Spy Month. Well, not specifically Spy Month, Spy movie opener. So this is the first movie in Spy franchises. Specifically, there has to be movies following these originals. And in case you had not realized, Zack did the Mission Impossible theme and our episode about James Bond because that makes more sense now. We're talking Mission Impossible today. so Zack,
you had me a little worried. I did not watch Casino Royale.
Zack's fear in his face right there as he realized that, maybe I just played him. No, we're here to talk Mission Impossible. But before we dig all the way into the crazy spy movie directed by the wonderful Mr. Brian De Palma, let's do our last Letterboxd movie. Mr. Zack Ford, what is your last Letterboxd movie?
My last Letterboxd movie is Space Jam. Maybe why my Mission Impossible soundtrack was getting close to a Space Jam song. Anyway, Space Jam, some weird shit. I liked the movie. I think 95% of the reason why I like it is I'm just so bewildered the whole time that this movie exists and that this happened. Because like Space Jam 2 happened, LeBron James being in it, all just like makes sense. Like it already has precedence. The last NBA legend, made a movie of Looney Tunes. That movie, is in the hearts of kids from the 90s, and people will go see it with the next, logical star to be in a sequel for it. Yeah, understand everything. The first one being made, Michael Jordan, who's like, one of the most famous people on the planet, kind of exiting a very complicated time in his life. And they're like, hey, do you want to make a movie about this period in your life? Like a pretty meta movie where we discover it, but we blame it all on the Looney Tunes. And you hang out Looney Tunes. Do you want to be in this? It's like, yeah, sounds like my jam. How did he agree to this? Why did he want to be part of this? Other than money? I'm like so confused. This is a weird movie. I forgot how meta it is. It's like all an excuse for why he ended up going back to the NBA after playing baseball was because he got inspired by playing for the Looney Tunes. And honestly, a funny joke of paper, and whoever got really, high on cocaine and came up with the idea was kind of a comic genius as far as making one joke. And I don't know, it creates a lot of intrigue to the movie. The other 5% I like this movie is I think the stuff with the other NBA players losing their powers is like legitimately hilarious. Not ironically funny, but there's a montage of Charles Barkley and Patrick Ewing and Muggsy Bogues, Sean Bradley, Larry Johnson. I said them all, and I feel very successful. And I named all 5 of those players. About them being like sad and seeing like a Freudian therapist and being rejected on the basketball court against girls when they're like, you're not Charles Barkley because you can't play. So they just completely dismissed that he's like 6'6" and looks identical to Charles Barkley. And it's all honestly really, really funny and the best stuff in that movie. And for some reason has been what I like remembered most even as a child. So even as a child, there's something that resonated me about watching the sad NBA players. So I still like find joy in this movie, but it is just batshit.
Yeah, it's been a while since I saw it, but I genuinely do want to revisit it as an adult and be like, this is such a weird thing. It's one of these things that like it's the classic childhood nostalgia thing where people watch your stuff as a kid and they all start liking it. And then everybody becomes an adult and goes, why the hell do we like this weird movie where Michael Jordan plays with Looney Tunes? Like, how is this a thing? It's like quite successful. I'm sure Michael Jordan made like a lot of money for this movie. There was famous stories about how he used to practice like hours and hours on set every day. He'd make people come play pickup games. So like he's legitimately a crazy person, because I don't know how you're like, I'm going to shoot a movie and also like practice for hours and hours every day. The dude is just insane.
Yeah, and like supposedly like other Hollywood stars would come and play pickup games against him just for their chance to say I got like destroyed by Michael Jordan. Like George Clooney, I guess, went to one of these pickup games when he was filming like Batman and Robin or something.
Yeah, and like other NBA stars would show up who like lived in the local area or something. It was a crazy time on set with Space Jam.
I'm assuming the same thing happened with LeBron James on there. Like he probably demanded his own core because they have to stay fresh.
Yeah, but I have the feeling it was a little bit different. Because the thing is, LeBron James is a little bit more about like rest and making sure his body can recover. And Michael Jordan was more like, I'm going to party for all night and smoke cigarettes and play 36 hours of golf and play basketball. And
like lose millions of dollars the night before or whatever
and like,
he decided to gamble
like
on.
Flip quarters or something at the wall and like bet $1,000 a flip.
We probably should save some of this because we are going to do a Space Jam New Generation, Next Generation. What's the name of this movie?
I don't know. I'll look at it.
It's not Space Jam. It's not Space Jam 2.
A New Legacy.
A New Legacy. I was close.
My God, that's a stupid name.
Pretty dumb. It's going to be a pretty dumb movie that I'm hoping will be fun though.
Yep, we will have a review coming for that sometime later this month. So my last Letterboxd movie is film. What I would consider the best film from a very, very well-respected director. I recently I was like, I haven't seen the Dark Knight trilogy in a while, so I'm going to rewatch the Dark Knight trilogy. And then being me, I had to finish off a little short marathon of Christopher Nolan with a rewatch of his best film, which is, of course, Dunkirk. A top 5 film from the 2010s decade. Dunkirk is amazing. And it's so visually interesting. The way it's shot is just like you could cut the sound and the dialogue and just watch all the images come up and you'd be interested in that. The use of the 3 different timelines is brilliant and especially interesting the more you watch it because you start identifying, oh, that's the ship that flew by. We saw that in an earlier timeline. You know, all that stuff. Even you get to see the characters in different moments in their own timelines. And I think more than anything for me, this movie really just hits me in the feels because of the really simple like patriotism and heroism of the idea that when your entire army is on a beach, a bunch of like fishermen and people with yachts and people with sailing ships would all just go across the channel in mass to pick up, the entire army of soldiers, their own, and bring them back. I think that's just one of the most incredibly amazing and astounding things that has ever happened throughout history. It also feels just incredibly British to be like, fuck it, we're all going to get on our little boats and drive across the channel to France against the Nazis and bring 300,000 soldiers back. That feels like the most stiff upper lip. You can never break us. And then the final ending when he's reading out the Churchill speech in the train is, I think, just magnificent and amazing. Mark Rylance is quite good. I love Kenneth Branagh. You put Harry Styles in a movie and it works, which is kind of crazy. You put a famous pop star in a movie and it never feels like a celebrity cameo. It feels like an actual character. I really like what's going on with Tom Hardy and is his name Jack Lowden up in the plane? I can't remember. Just
no idea.
Really great, just really amazing film overall. How do you feel about Dunkirk,
Yeah.
Zach?
For behind the scenes look, we got really close to just abandoning our Justice League watch along and just decided to do Dunkirk instead because we were using Dunkirk as our practice for how to get the thing to work. And I think I regret our final decision to not just do Dunkirk because I think that would have been a lovely time and just a great troll, especially if we posted that as our Justice League commentary. But I mean, I really enjoyed it, and you just like logging it on Letterboxd made me want to rewatch it. Just the idea of knowing it's out there, but I didn't because life. But I like thinking about watching movies, maybe more than watching themselves. Thinking about watching Dunkirk made me feel momentarily really good.
It's so good. It's such a good movie. And there's like
people who don't like it is kind of not understandable. It's like, dude, just not like appreciate like
there's some weird
and have incompetency.
There's some weird takes from the people who don't like this movie, like, oh, there's no characters. I totally disagree on that point. I also think like this is a movie that kind of subverts one of the biggest criticisms of Nolan's entire career, which is that he does not make emotional movies that have heart and soul and like a human aspect to them. He makes a lot of movies that are very robotic, very intellectual sci-fi, but they're way more intellectual brain than emotional brain. And this is a movie where like it is all about like trying to protect people and caring for others. And like there's a lot of emotion and a lot of compassion and a lot of just like determination in the midst of just absolute anarchy and like toughness. And I think that's like just something I don't understand why it gets overlooked so easily.
I think maybe just a little theorizing on Nolan's ability with emotions is I think why Dunkirk works emotionally more than other movies is because the emotions is inherent to like the set pieces and like towards the plotting. Like it's within the action is where the moving, actions take place rather than in Inception or in Star Wars, I do find effective, but other ones, the emotions are more like within the exposition and within the just characters, discussing how they feel rather than us, rather than it just naturally being part of the plot.
Yeah. It's a lot of like character-based emotion in this. It's Kenneth Branagh seeing all the boats coming. It's, Mark Rylance realizing that his son just lied to Cillian Murphy to protect him after Barry Keoghan has died. It's all those small moments. It's even like the stuff on the train. It's reading I think the most emotional moment in the film might be the reading of the Churchill speech out of the paper as they're at the end, and they're intercutting it with shots of like all the stuff left on the beaches, but there aren't people left there, and even like the burning of the plane and stuff. It is a truly astoundingly impressive film. I'm so glad I got to see it in theaters because I saw it in theaters for the first time, and I've rewatched it twice since then at home. And it's such a theater movie. Like, it's really good at home, but it's so good in the theaters because it's so visually impressive. It's such like just a visual masterpiece.
It has to be like sometime in the future if movie theaters still exist. Like Spielberg gets not necessarily retrospectives, but his movies just get randomly screened all the time, like lots of them. And I feel like Nolan is like the next logical step, like 10, 20 years down the line, that they just rescreen some of these movies in theaters often.
Yeah, because more than any other director of this generation, more than a Tarantino or a Finch or something, his movies are big screen movies. Like, you want to see that stuff in IMAX. You want to see that stuff on as big a screen as possible with as good of a sound system as possible. We have waxed poetic about Dunkirk. We do need to cover Dunkirk someday in this podcast. They voted down
boats. God damn it!
They voted down boats. Let's jump ahead. Let's talk about Mission Impossible. Zach, would you like to give us a Mission Impossible plot summary?
Oh shit! I'm not prepared for saying all these spy plots that make sense.
Do you want me to try?
Complicated. I want you to try for this. If you do really well, you're doing all a spy month. Like you took over songs. I mean, last time you took over songs, you ended up dropping the whole concept.
I did.
So if you take over plot, that means we're going to stop doing plots in the next 2 weeks.
Okay. Ethan Hunt is a member of a spy team with a bunch of other people run by John Voight. At the beginning of the film, they're attempting to acquire a list, which is the real names that matches to the code names that a bad guy is supposed to have. This operation goes terribly wrong.
Please.
The knock list. the knock list. It's an irrelevant deal. It's just it's complete. It's a complete nonsense word that is used in a spy movie. Which one of the reasons
how is it spelled? No one knows.
We all love spy movies. Is that okay? The operation goes terribly wrong. Basically, everybody dies, and they accuse Ethan Hunt, played by Tom Cruise, of being a villain. He goes to an apartment and gets real sleep deprived while writing messages in a bunch of different languages on a laptop inside the CIA's mainframe. So I don't really understand how they didn't identify him. He finally gets a meeting with somebody called Max, which we are supposed to assume is a male, but is actually a female played by Vanessa Redgrave. She says, if you get me the list.
You only assume it's a male, you sexist ass.
Everybody assumes it's a male, you dumbasses. Shut up. She says, you can have the list. If you give me the list, I will give you a bunch of money, and I will give you the identity. Oh, what's the person's name?
Job.
Job is the spy, especially the mole inside
to this movie.
The quote unquote. I'm sorry, I forgot one detail. The quote unquote mole inside the Mission Impossible team. The only way to get the list is to recruit Jean Reno and Ving Rhames to run a ridiculous hacking feat from inside CIA headquarters, which involves Tom Cruise dangling out of the ceiling. They do this, and then they go to a train where they're going to have the pass off, but this is not before it is revealed that actually John Voight is not dead. Initially, Ethan Hunt thinks that John Voight is a good guy, but realizes in the training he's a bad guy. There is a crazy fight scene on a helicopter that ends in the helicopter being blown up with Jean Reno and John Voight on it, and that explosion shoots Ethan Hunt back to the train. They get off, and he's basically like, I'm out, I'm leaving, bye Ving Rhames, you can go back and be a part of the team, I'm out. End of the movie.
While he came from nowhere to drink 1/10 of a beer and say goodbye, Ving Rhames, he goes to a table and there's only enough beer for Tom Cruise to sip and leave. This is very noticeable to me. Did you notice that Ving Rhames had like 2/3 of a beer, and Tom Cruise comes from what seemingly should be a long phone call to be so far ahead of Ving Rhames and have this amount of beer left? I had to think that Tom Cruise is like, I can't put alcohol in my system because it will explode. So you need to have that beer as low as possible for me to go in and out.
See, here's what I think. I think Tom Cruise was like, I have to seem like a bigger man, so it has to look like I chugged most of a beer, and then went and made a phone call and came back, and Ving Rhames was not able to catch up to me.
Or he was like, I'm going to have to drink the whole beer in one sip to seem cool, but can you just like make it alone, because I can't do more than that. Tom Cruise has never put alcohol into the system unless it's for a movie, correct? I feel like there's no way he drinks.
I don't think Tom Cruise is a person. I still am 100% convinced that
Tom Cruise is
a life model decoy. Yeah, that's why he doesn't go into the water in any movies, because he short circuit.
Before we move on from plot summary, one other thought. I think the next logical step for that segment, now that we're past 50 episodes, probably are we at 60 yet?
This is episode 63.
Jesus Christ, what are we doing with our lives? I think our next step is to like full on like long term 40 years of marriage couple the plot summaries and just like interrupt each other the whole time through and say no that's not how it happened.
This is actually I like
this and finish each other, because I had to I interrupted you already a lot more than you've ever interrupted me, and I wanted to do it about 30 other times.
Let's. You know what? We're doing this going.
Then we just we're tag teaming it. Someone's gonna start it, and we're gonna interrupt as much as we want to make sure that we're getting everything we need.
Good. So let's pull out from the actual plot of this film and talk about a couple other things, because I think when you talk about spy movies and openers to spy movie franchises, you have to talk about source material. So Mission Impossible is based on a 1960s TV show I have never seen. From what I understand, it's not this movie was not trying to be a direct creation of that TV show.
Yeah, they made up a character. The John Voight character, I think, was the lead in the TV show, and Ethan Hunt is completely fabricated, fresh. You double checking me so I don't say bullshit. It's all have silence. I'm gonna go back to do the Mission Impossible theme song every time that you say silence while you Google.
Okay, so
I should probably listen to this sound.
Tim Phelps is not a character in the original show. He is a character on the sequel show, played by Peter Graves there, and is essentially, I believe, the only character that is carried over into the TV show. Now, the sequel show ran in the late 80s to early 90s. So they're actually not that far. So the idea, I guess, is to take that show and carry into this. Now, Mission Impossible as a franchise would then go on to, is it 6 sequels?
I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm looking on the fandom site. His first appearance of Jim Phelps. It says Mission Impossible 1966. What is the sequel show?
There's a Mission Impossible show called Mission Impossible 1988. That's okay, the character.
He appeared in. It says 1966 in Mission Impossible.
Oh, okay, but he's not.
He was the director.
I screwed this up. He is.
Yeah, you know nothing.
No, he's. I was trying to read the Wikipedia really fast. He didn't show up as a main character from the beginning in the previous show.
Oh, okay.
So Jim Phelps is a previous character. And then this franchise would go on to spawn 6 movies, with the 7th movie coming probably, I believe, next year, 2022. We clearly have done a lot of research. Nice job, Jess. But one thing that's really I think one thing that's really clear really quickly is that Brian De Palma has no interest in making Mission Impossible the TV series the movie, because
he's doing
right from the beginning of the movie, he's like, I'm going to axe the majority of the team right away and make this movie solely about the new character Ethan Hunt and what he's doing.
And not even about a Mission Impossible team, like, because he is disenfranchised 20 minutes into the movie to where it's more a like excommunicated spy, which is often like the third one in the franchise, which for Mission Impossible is pretty much every movie. Yeah,
but what differs between this and the other ones in the franchise is that often he is excommunicated or cut off from the main agency, from like agency leadership, but he's typically cut off in the other ones with his team. It's his entire team that gets excommunicated. And this one, it's literally like, this movie in some ways reminds me a lot of Scream, because it really does a real bait and switch early on. Like, it brings in Emilio Estevez and Kristen Scott Thomas, who are like relatively famous actors at this point, like people who have names, and
you definitely think they're there the whole movie.
This is the Drew Barrymore. They're the Drew Barrymore of this film, where they're like, these people, of course, they're going to be a big part of it. They're like famous actors, and just kills them like in the first scene. And in theory, to what you as you're watching, kills John Voight, who's probably the most famous or second most famous at this point, because Cruise is more famous now. But kills like basically much of the cast that is famous at the beginning of the film, and instantly. And it's actually kind of interesting for a spy franchise. I feel like a lot of spy franchises do not upend the casts of their stories this quickly. This feels like a move that would happen in a 4th film or a 5th film later on, as they were really trying to recast or something, as people were getting sick of being in these movies. Like, it's kind of crazy looking back. They were like, Kristen Scott Thomas, would you like to be in a Mission Impossible movie? Sure. All right, you're going to be in one scene and you're going to die. I
mean, something more in the horror world. You said Scream, but also like Psycho, and we talked about Psycho on the show. But it's the same thing that Hitchcock kind of started that debate and switch of what you attach to star power rather than just the plotting. But you think, because you know this person, you know this face, you have all these assumptions you make as an audience. How do you toy with that? How do you play with the audience assumptions? Basically, in a way, it works in a tragic sense, because this is my 3rd or 4th time. And part of the reason why I'm like so devastated by them losing is like, I want to watch Kristen Scott Thomas like be a spy. That like sounds great, and I feel so devastated when she goes. I'm like attached to that character 10 minutes into her being on screen.
And it really, in some ways, I was watching this and I was like, I like what Emilio Estevez is doing here as kind of this geek nerd character. And then I'm like, oh, this is kind of the reason that they probably came around with the Simon Pegg character in later films. Like, he's a British version of this, but like they wanted that character back. And it's kind of crazy that they were just like so quick to just destroy the entire cast, which sort of feels like a very Brian De Palma thing to do, is to upend the entire cast and character structure of your film very quickly.
He's a little like edgecore, you know. He's a little like, how do I just like piss people off?
Yeah, I mean, it feels very much like Brian De Palma's like, okay, fine, I'll direct your stupid Mission Impossible TV movie, but guess what? I'm killing the entire team.
And I'm going to make it secretly all about fucking and have like metal going to Emilio Estevez's eyes. Make it as graphic as possible.
It's a gnarly ass death when he dies.
Yeah.
I don't really understand the Kristen Scott Thomas death. I'm genuinely confused about how that happened.
She seems like she could have got away. She just got stabbed
Yeah.
while she was shocked that Jean Reno was there. But she, like, he was nowhere near her, so she easily could have got away. They weren't targeting her. That was her own, like, walking at the wrong place.
I don't know. Maybe the assumption was trying to say that she'd worked with Jean Reno when he wasn't excommunicated as well.
But she only went there to steal the disc, because he was actually, what his job was he was killing the other spy that was there with the fake disc, with the fake knock list. Because that's who he stabbed originally. It was the guy that they were following.
Yeah, but he's also stabbing the rest of the team. That's his job, to get rid of them, because he's working with Voight.
Yeah, so he might have hunted her down eventually anyways.
I mean, theoretically, that's an interesting death. It's also like, I guess it makes sense in hindsight that this series would become all about Ethan Hunt, to the point where this is basically the Tom Cruise show anytime he does one of these movies.
It is immediately in this. It's because they Tom Cruise, produced the movie, right? This is really his baby in a lot of ways. He's the one that really wanted to get it made. He ideally wanted this to be his franchise that he found a future for him in, and what his whole acting career now is kind of devoted to this, or things trying to recreate this, or what Mission Impossible is now, more so, to where you're giving a lot of credit for Brian De Palma kind of upending the team aspect of the Mission Impossible TV, but part of it's like Tom Cruise, like he's making this movie, but it's really not. He wants it to be about him. Like, this is a vehicle for him. So they're going to destroy the team, upend the team. So it is essentially an Ethan Hunt movie. The team is all just secondary to the star there. Because for a half hour of this, there is no team. It's just watching Ethan Hunt try to get stuff together. It's a Tom Cruise movie. It's an Ethan Hunt thing.
Yeah,
it could easily be just called Ethan Hunt.
But it is also interesting how much the franchise changes over time. And part of that is Mission Impossible, more than any other franchise I can think of in recent memory, did not really care about visual style and like tone consistency throughout the franchise. Like, they literally just kind of let directors take a hold, and Brian De Palma got to make a Brian De Palma movie, and John Woo got to make a John Woo movie, and J.J. Abrams got to make a J.J. Abrams movie. Like, everyone kind of makes their movie in the franchise. That's one of the parts that makes it such an interesting franchise, is they did not hold or exert the control over the franchise you typically see with franchise properties. Like,
there's no house style.
Right. For example, the MCU, they let, Taika Waititi do Thor, but Taika Waititi does a Taika Waititi Kevin Feige movie, and James Gunn does a James Gunn Kevin Feige movie. There's always a clear indication that Kevin Feige is standing there going, you can make that change, you can't make that change, you can make that change. And when this is a franchise where they literally seem to just be like, yeah, do whatever you want. Just make a movie that works and keep Tom Cruise happy, and then we'll be fine. Like, that seems to be a very clear indication. And Tom Cruise is like the consistent presence of the person who just produces all this stuff.
It's like the essential connective tissue is like, you need to have like at least one really exciting set piece that has like Tom Cruise doing the crazy stuff. And it's kind of became 3 at this point. And having a MacGuffin, which is, I think, just part of the source material, something that's so ingrained in the Mission
It's very,
Impossible franchise, having that become
very spy genre.
So that's the connective tissue. It's like as long as you include like one exciting set piece and this MacGuffin, do whatever the fuck you want and stylize that everything however you want.
Yeah, and this is like, it's funny to look back. This is a very impressive action set piece, the whole dangling thing from there. And they really set this up being like, you can't make sound, you can't sweat, you can't do all these different things, you can't touch anything, you can't do all this pressurized stuff. But also hilariously, in comparison to what comes after, this is a really tame, really tame. He's not jumping out of helicopters. He's not climbing up crazy high buildings. He's not like going underwater. He's not trying to hold his breath underwater. Like a lot of the stunts, like at some point, this franchise really does become the Tom Cruise is going to out Tom Cruise himself every time. He's going to do something insane and crazy and try to see like how close to death he can get, while he's jumping across rooftops.
I think that's what I love about this movie and that specific scene so much, because I think this is a top 3 set piece for me in all Mission Impossibles because of its simplistic nature is such a funny phrase to use because it's still not simplistic, but it's comparatively
contained.
Simplistic, contained. Yeah, contained and more grounded and a little more created on a soundstage rather than fully, acting everything out, a little more naturally. But I find it just more creative in that sense, a lot like less. Look what I can do. Mission Impossible can be titled at this point. Look what I can do. Quotations Tom Cruise, and this just seemed more ingrained in the plot. More creative in the structure of it all because there's a lot more coordination with the planning around it rather than just the art of him hanging down, but there's all the coordination of where the other characters are at the time, where the government agent going to go in at the time, and there's a more suspense built to it through the environment rather than just the suspense coming from the act itself.
Yes, I think that's the big thing about this set piece is it is narratively makes sense. A lot of the other ones are cool in the abstract, but he doesn't really have to climb up the side of a crazy skyscraper. He doesn't really have to do a lot of these stunts. This one he has to because it's the only way. They really also, it's about how it's set up in the story. They do a really good job setting it up and saying the only way for them to hack in and get this list is to get to the terminal. The only way to get to the terminal is to go down through this hole. The only way to go down through this hole is to hang like this. And here's all the potential problems. Oh, you can't have it. He can't get any sweat on the ground. He can't touch anything. He can't make too much noise. He can't breathe. All these different things. Like they build all this suspense. So when you're sitting there watching the scene and watching him dangle, you're like, you feel the tension of like, oh my God, what if his sweat falls on the ground? Oh my God, what if like a rat bites John Reno? Like, oh my God, you get to feel the tension. That's what makes the scene so impressive is you are sitting there, you understand the stakes. You understand the incredibly detailed defense system. And so you're terrified that he's going to make too much noise or accidentally touch something or almost fall on the ground. And when things go wrong, it just heightens the tension and makes the scene just incredibly compelling and enjoyable to watch.
Yeah, I think the most simplified way to state it is in the other movies, it's more like the plot is built around the set piece. Like the set piece comes first and like how can make that sense within the plot. When this is the set piece is built around the plot. And I also think this scene is a lot of ways where the Hitchcockian homage and inspiration of De Palma makes sense because of everything you just said is he makes you aware of every aspect of the scene and everything that may cause effects later, which is very Hitchcockian. Like you see the rat, you see where the agent is all times. Just that attention to detail and the suspense is very De Palma-y and therefore Hitchcockian as well.
Yeah, and it's really, 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 really enjoyable. Let's talk about the cast. Or do you want to talk more about De Palma?
Let's talk about the cast.
All right, so Tom Cruise as Ethan Hunt. This is a very heroic character for him, and it's very much. It makes sense, really, kind of if you think it where Tom Cruise is in his career to jump into this. Tom Cruise is like on a pretty decent hot streak at this point. Let me just pull up his filmography and give you a quick rundown. So this comes out in
and about to continue his like most serious dramatic streak.
So it's a really weird combination of he's fitting in some actiony roles like Mission Impossible in the midst of some real drama. So this comes out the same year. This is his first film of 1996. His second film of 1996 is a really big Oscar favorite, which is Jerry Maguire. The year before, 2 years before, he did 1994. He'd done Interview with a Vampire, which was pretty successful at the time. He'd done The Firm with Sidney Pollack a year before that. Then he did A Few Good Men, Far and Away with Ron Howard. So he's like, something you see really consistently here is, even regardless of how good every one of these films are, he's working with Rob Reiner. He's working with Ron Howard. He's working with Neil Jordan's kind of an outlier to that, but he's even working with Cameron Crowe. He's working with Brian De Palma. And then if you go back to 1990 is his other kind of action movie, which is Days of Thunder with Tony Scott. And it's interesting because then, like, after this, he goes on to do stuff like Eyes Wide Shut and Magnolia in 99. So this is like up until he gets back into the Mission Impossible franchise in 2000. This is kind of his one of his only 2 action roles in the 90s, which is hilarious because if you jump ahead to the 2000s, that's like all Tom Cruise does now. Is, you know, even like when he's doing the higher class version of that in like Minority Report, you know, he's doing that, but he's also doing stuff like War of the Worlds and Mission Impossible 3, and even like his dramatic roles are still a little actiony. And then you cut to the 2010s, and he's just, outside of like something like Rock of Ages, it's just 100% Tom Cruise is an action star, and Tom Cruise is going to do Tom Cruise things in Tom Cruise movies.
Even Rocket Ages kind of makes sense because all these movies are kind of stunt based, and I said, like, look what I can do. And Rocket Ages still kind of has a look what I can do quality. Like, it's still him showing off, like, look what I can do. I can also let you just sing like crazy rock ballads, and there's something still very showy about it and stunty about it in a way. It still seems like a stunt move by him, even though it's singing and not jumping off of an airplane.
Yeah,
and it's like the movie is built around watch what Tom Cruise does in this movie rather than Tom Cruise inhabiting a character.
And the other big thing that starts to happen in the 1990s, he's working with a bunch of different, in the 80s as well, he's working with a bunch of different high-level directors. And by the mid-2000s and the 2010s, Tom Cruise has picked out his studio guys, his Joseph Kosinski's, you know, his Christopher McQuarrie's, people who are not necessarily high-level auteur directors, but people who are just like the Tom Cruise whisperers of directors. They just make Tom Cruise happy, and that's why he continues to work with people like that.
Yeah. He's looking for like partners and collaborators and not auteurs. It's almost like an Adam Sandler thing. Like Adam Sandler could have worked with like bigger comedy directors, but he also just chose his friends that he knows he can like truly collaborate and hang out with, and not necessarily have to succumb to their vision, but have.
Well, I think it's more. I think it's less collaboration. I think it's more in the same vein as Sandler and like Eddie Murphy and these people who started working with these kind of, they do like 10 movies with the same person that no one had ever heard of before. I think it's about control. I think it's that Tom Cruise knows if he worked as a movie with Joseph Kosinski or Chris McQuarrie, Tom Cruise gets final cut. Tom Cruise is the executive producer. Tom Cruise controls everything. It is a Tom
like a shadow
Cruise,
second director.
Yeah. In the same way that you'd see some of these famous comedy stars be like, why have you stopped working with famous directors? Oh, you just want to do whatever you want for these 10 movies. And, you know, you can make a bunch of money off them regardless. And Tom Cruise sort of falls into the same thing where like he gets to control the brand, and he sort of knows that like it's going to make some money regardless. You know, even like, you know, like he had some really bad movies in the 2010s. Like, and, you know, the freaking Mummy, which is terrible and atrociously bad, made like $410 million. Like, there's a level to like, he knows that if he does enough Tom Cruise actiony things and creates enough control over everything that's going on, he somehow dodges any blame for any of these things, and also simultaneously always seems to make a decent amount of a profit on them.
And him specifically in this movie, to go back a little bit,
I
think this is my favorite Tom Cruise performance. It definitely is my favorite Ethan Hunt performance. And it's not my favorite Mission Impossible, but I think just this one's more of an acting job and less of a stunt thing. It is weird. Like, and it's hard to say his acting is like good, but it's so highly enjoyable and very like 90s Tom Cruise, and is more like exasperated and shouting and, you know, saying lines like 10 degrees too high. And a little like bug-eyedness, which I think he does in Jerry Maguire, and why that movie fails and why he can't play romantic lead, because that's not the level you need for romantic chemistry, but it works so well. And, you know, a spy franchise and having a little bit of that paranoia of you being, you know, taken down by the company you worked for and being falsely accused. And I think it's just highly, highly enjoyable. I think the best scene in this movie, in a top 5 Mission Impossible scene, is him at dinner just shouting at the director of the whole, you know, Mission Impossible 4 that like, you don't want to see me when I'm angry kind of lecture shout is as thrilling as him climbing down a building.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think he's definitely the performance where he's definitely giving the most. There are some pretty funny stuff. The scene where he's sending all those messages, the scene where Phelps's wife disturbs him is a little bit goofy at times. He's overplaying some of the scenes a little bit more than he needs to. But I think he's also really enjoyable in all of this stuff, especially when Hunt gets to take control and they get to start doing all the hacking stuff. I think he's really good in all those sequences. Something he's always been really good at is the physical acting, but I think this is one of the few Mission Impossible. And I think really after from 4 onward, they really stopped making Ethan Hunt a character. He was almost just like an avatar for craziness and stunts and craziness. But
it's this almost
time, go ahead.
And keep going. Sorry.
No, I was going to go ahead.
Yeah. It feels like that after his couch jumping Oprah thing, he wanted to tone down his on-screen craziness. Where it took a lot of what I think people love about Tom Cruise on screen, where the performance you get closest to this is his meltdown on the current Mission Impossible franchise or movie they're making behind the scenes about COVID protocol. It's the closest to seeing Tom Cruise's yelling that we love from early movies, that energy. And it seems more restrained, almost like he doesn't want to be called psychotic, like people are accusing him of, based on his off-screen antics.
It is interesting because a lot of he is a little bit of a wild man. That's what people liked in Top Gun and some of his 80s and early 90s stuff. And he really has toned it down. He's just he's very action oriented, but also weirdly mellow in a way that's sometimes a little bit confusing as a performance. It's how are you this hyped up and this action based, and you want to run around and do all this crazy stuff, but you're also this calm and collected? It's I feel if you were really going to just jump off the sides of buildings and stuff, you'd have a little bit more of a wild man aspect to you. And I think that's something that works really well in this one, where it's he is a bit of a wild man. He's yeah, I'm just going to recruit these 2 guys and then we're going to go to Langley and I'm going to hang through a hole and connect something to this thing. And we're going to do this whole hacking scheme and we're just going to pull it off because of course we're going to do it. I think that little bit of a wild man in him is what makes the whole film kind of work.
Yeah, there's a lot more quirk to this character, a lot more a twitch in a way to this, which is someone who's risking their life every day in this, and constantly having to have secrets about themselves, would have, rather than the complete other control that they want, the incompetence that they would exhibit with him later. You have him hallucinating and half asleep in this, and being caught more off guard sometimes. He's not the perfect superhero character he is now. That I think is a little more interesting.
Yeah, that's another thing, which is even a couple of times in this film, there's fight scenes, and it's clear that Ethan is a pretty decent spy, but he's also not necessarily the most badass fighter. And then you cut to some of the more recent films, and it's it is a little interesting at times that Tom Cruise almost has that, he has that very much movie star mentality. He's I can't lose fights on screen, so I'm going to win these fights, even though I'm 5'7", and that guy's 6'3", and I'm going to lose that fight anyway. I'm going to win the fight anyway. It feels like a lot of I think maybe it just is the impact of De Palma. De Palma's you're going to play a character in this film. We're not playing Tom Cruise movie star. We're playing Ethan Hunt, the character. And I wonder if in a world with people like Abrams and McQuarrie, if it's a little more just yeah, you can just, I wonder if Tom Cruise has just kind of over time tightened his hold on what happens in the franchise. And what you see here is more an actual performance directed by a director who's actually in charge of the set on a daily basis.
Yeah. Who's next?
Let's talk about Jon Voight. Jon Voight as Jim Phelps, who is the character that comes in from the TV show. The TV people were kind of mad about this because he's sort of the hero on the TV show, and then the movie makes him into a traitor, because I think this is a very intentional choice from De Palma, that they wanted to make sure that the character that everybody knew from the TV show was there as a bridge to the movie, but also that they got rid of him so they did not have to continue to be tied to the TV show going forward.
Yeah. Makes sense. And I think it also plays off, the viewer's expectations, because you're this is a character I know, he's going to be a real hero. And Brad De Palma's fuck you, he's a villain. Here's the thing about Jon Voight, though. I've accidentally I'm kind of the mini John Voight marathon, and by that I mean I watched 2 John Voight movies in the past 2 weeks because I watched Rosewood as well. But John Voight, and partially based on who he has become politically, which is very problematic for a number of reasons. But even then, when he was a more liberal figure, he just has the face and aura of what I would think is like the male Karen, which is like the old white men that like yell at little league baseball coaches that they have no even no relation to anybody on the team, or like the people honking horns at you in parking lots because you're like not moving fast enough. And this is John Voight to me in a lot of ways, and it makes it really hard for me to root him on screen. So I'm glad he's playing a villain because I don't think I could ever take him as someone that you believe in and trust with. I'm immediately the first 10 minutes, he's the one person on the team. I'm like, you're not a hero, and I don't want you to be a leader. I don't find you noble or trustworthy. And it's a lot of bias, I think, based on what he is. But he also just has an asshole face. Can we just acknowledge that's okay to say John Voight has an asshole face?
He really did not age well as an actor in terms of like when he was younger. If you go back to like the 60s and 70s, you could believe that guy. Like, I think he's really good in Midnight Cowboy. He's also like, the two big things for him is over time, he's kind of done the trifecta of terribleness, which is that over time he's aged poorly. He looks more evil. And like, if you go look in his movies, you're like, yeah, he's a bad person. Yeah, he's a bad person. The Rainmaker and weird stuff like Anaconda and Varsity Blues. He also sort of leaned into it, but also like over time he became a worse actor. Started to be like, I'm just going to say really heinous things all the time, and then like, screw you if you want to like have a problem with that. And he's just not like, I can't tell if his career died because he said a bunch of stuff people didn't like, or if his career died because he like stopped being a competent actor in things. Because like, he got some shots in the 2000s to be in stuff, but like the big thing you see of his 2010s is like, he's in like a Fantastic Beasts movie, and then everything else he's in, you're like, I've never heard of this shit.
I think often the assholeness comes after your career starts to die. It's almost like your resentment towards Hollywood and towards, the general culture at large and how they're treating you is like, fuck them all. This is how I believe now that it's all for myself. It's the same like thing with James Woods, because then they use it as an excuse. Like, Hollywood kicked me out because my views were too radical. Where it's really Hollywood kicked them out because they just weren't succeeding anymore, and then you became an asshole because of it.
Yeah, that's probably the case, which is just like people are like, dude, you're a pain in the ass to deal with. You stopped being good in movies like 20 years ago. You had like a couple okay performances in the 90s. I don't know if he's. I do think it might be the flaw in the character in this film is it's like you just don't really believe this character is good. He always seems kind of like, even other members of the team that turn out to be traitors, you might believe that they're more good than he is. He always just kind of seems slimy, and like there's something wrong with him.
And I mean, we're watching this for the multiple times, so we could know what happened. So of course we're going to be a little like more suspicious of where it leads. But I do think there's a lot of hints given by De Palma's direction too, of the oh my gosh, what is the city it takes place in? I am blanking on it. I was going to say Prague. It's not Prague. You'll come up with it.
Kiev.
But Kiev, yeah. During the Kiev scene where the whole team dies, he's the only one the car kind of explodes. They like don't care about those characters far away also. But like you see Kristen Scott Thomas like approach it and being murdered, but his is also through like video and phone calls of him explaining that he's about to die.
Actually,
don't see any of the action happening to where that gives a hint that maybe there's not actually someone chasing him because it's all being exposed through his words.
I correct myself. The opening scene happens in Kiev, then the team is sent to Prague for the actual mission that occurs.
Oh, it is in Prague.
It is in Prague. Also, I learned how to spell knock, and I learned what knock means by reading Wikipedia.
How do you spell knock?
NOC, because it is non-official.
God damn it! It's not even one of the 5 options I put in my name.
All right, we talked about John Voight. I'm gonna skip discussion of his wife because I think her character is sort of nothing.
She's there for the Brian De Palma sexuality, sex politics version of it all,
Yeah.
and
Ethan Hunt wants to
and,
bone his boss's wife.
and I don't think that's ever that explicit, and it doesn't really seem
He
like he wants
tries
to bone it more than
no.
John Voight assumes that like
He tries
they
to kiss her in
fucked.
one scene. There's a clear attempt to kiss her.
No, when she gets there and they more or less just like console each other.
No. There's a scene later where like she gets really close to his face and like
And then they cut.
No, she pulls away before he can kiss her, but he's definitely trying to kiss her. I think that's a very clear indication that he's attracted to her.
Okay.
Which
You're two beautiful people. It's okay.
It's a pretty weird.
He thought John Voight was dead, so it's not like he's like cheating on the woman.
It's still pretty weird. It's still pretty weird if we're being completely honest.
What's weirder, him wanting to sleep with someone that was his boss's wife, or the boss shooting his wife because he assumed she boned Tom Cruise?
I think the Tom Cruise thing is weirder.
Do you think it's like pretty cool guy shit to shoot your wife?
I'm not saying it's cool. I'm saying in the world we live in, it does not surprise me that a older man with a really hot wife would get super jealous and stupid and shoot her based on basically nothing.
Based on her saying "Don't kill Tom Cruise" and him being like, "Fuck you, you fucked him" in his mind because he did do but before that was preceded by "You got to taste the goods" or whatever line that he gives to Tom Cruise. So you already had this preconceived notion of jealousy. So she didn't even do anything. She just her not wanting him to die was enough for him to assume that they fucked and his jealousy to go off.
Yeah. It's a pretty funny scene. And it almost plays comedic for a second there because it is so kind of abrupt and ridiculous. Let's talk about
it's still just anyways, yeah, she doesn't have much to do, but I think she's solid what she is, but she is used primarily just for the sexuality of it.
She's a pawn in the Phelps Hunt game, if we're being completely honest.
This is Brian De Palma's version of a femme fatale, just not given enough of the twistiness to really work with that classic femme fatales.
It is sort of amazing that she's the character that survives, and they did not cast Kristen Scott Thomas in that role. Let's talk about the two team members they recruited. So Ving Rhames as Luther Sticknell and Jean Reno as Franz Krieger. Ving Rhames would go on to become like sort of a weirdly. It is funny. I would love to be in the shoes of somebody walking into the theaters in 1996, and then be able to tell them that Ving Rhames would still be in this franchise. Like,
I think it makes sense because they had the last scene together in the restaurant, and they have a little more of that friendship chemistry. You know, John Reno is dismissed early on as a bad guy, but he's the one like honorable man, already being seen as like a Jiminy Cricket-esque character to Tom Cruise at the end of this, and that steady friend for him to have around. Because that last scene is very like Casablanca, like walking away from the plane, and then like our friendship, whatever the fucking line is.
This is the beginning of us talking about beautiful friendship.
Yes, it has this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship appeal to me. That scene does. Them walking away, it just seems like they will definitely reconnect for another time.
Yes.
So it makes sense.
I don't think it makes sense. I don't think people would be able to predict that they would do 6 movies and Ving Rhames would still be Ving Rhames and Tom Cruise would be the only cast members in this movie who I think ever appeared in another one.
I don't think you would be like Tom Cruise is going to be nearing 60 and still doing this shit. I don't think you would have thought that in the 90s. That's
probably another thing. What about Jean Reno? Is this kind of just Jean Reno? Jean Reno has an interesting period in the 90s where he does Leon the Professional, and then he sort of just plays Leon the Professional in several other films.
Yeah, but I kind of like that bit, and I kind of want Jean Reno to come back. He's someone that I don't want to dig into his personal life because it just seems like he might have some shit. It's just some like European shit that they do. But I just like the Jean Reno. But he did 3 times because it's also somewhat similar, but a good guy in Ronin.
Ronin is that.
He's also playing off as well. Here's something he was in really recently, and I was like, yeah, let's get Jean Reno back. This seems great. And
he's in the Five Bloods.
That's it. Yes. I'm like, thank you, Spike Lee. We need Jean Reno back. He's in it for like 5
He's very good. He's very good at it too.
Very good at it. And he just has a great face. He had a great accent that I think works for these kind of genre movies. But this kind of genre, not spy movies, but genre he works best in, that kind of crime thriller thing has kind of went to becoming a straight to DVD genre, and not enough high quality films he made that really he can keep shining in. But I feel he's just like a great like villain or like maybe villain. He has a lot of mystery behind
Good
his
henchman.
persona that I think is
Good
perfect
henchman.
for those great henchmen.
He's
There's
really weird though.
always a suspense to like what is this guy up to that he brings. I think is important to the tone of his movies.
Great accent, really good accent.
Yeah.
Always good.
Yeah.
He also is just a dude who has a very bizarre career. If you go look at his, his filmography, he got stuck in like comedies in like the 2000s.
Yeah, it's a bad idea.
No, it was not a good part of his career. I really do hope that like The Five Blood shows people that this guy still has, everything he had in the 90s. He can come and do those roles. Like he has that. You can put him in roles in your films, and he's very good in them.
For a second, I was like, he's in Chef. He's in John Favreau's Chef. No, he
The
is
Chef,
The Chef,
which is a weird French comedy.
Chef.
And then we've got Ving Rhames, who's just. I love Ving Rhames. Who doesn't love Ving Rhames? He's just so much fun. He's just one of those people. You're like, I like him and everything.
Because in Pulp Fiction's what he's most known for, and he kind of has that mystery crime genre tone to that performance of like, what is this guy's story? And this is a little more straightforward. He's just like the good sidekick, and I like seeing. I think he's a great casting to be a good sidekick that you wouldn't think of. Like it kind of comes from nowhere. He's not someone you would imagine would be a hacker, and not someone you would imagine would be like the friend of Tom Cruise. And in a way, it works geniusly. And it's a big, lovely relationship that I think they exhibit perfectly by the end of the film.
You're right, because he is that one thing where it's like you look at him, he walks on screen, you're like, oh, this guy is definitely the muscle, because he looks like he's supposed to be the muscle member of the team. And the fact that he's like the hacker dude who like wants a bunch of fancy laptops is just it's a good flipping kind of the general stereotype on its head. And he's
like the morally sound one of the team, which they also play with because you know him in the movie as an excommunicated spy, someone kicked off the team, just like Tom Cruise. And do you get that story fully? I can't think of why he was kicked out. Was it the hacking job that they mentioned previously?
He was hacking.
But he really is the one that has a lot of ethical grounds to everything he does. He states that it's very important that he will not let the knock list get out because he sees the lack of morality. Unlike that's the comparison between him and John Moreau, who is more the black market criminal at this point.
That's what makes it so good, is because they show up as the two excommunicated people, and you look at them and you think, oh, these guys are definitely both bad news. They both look like they pulled some shit off, that they might not be the most ethical people. And the fact that like John Moreau is like a complete double agent, like murderer, totally working with John Voight, and then Ving Rhames is like the most upstanding, morally right character in the entire film, is just a really good, enjoyable twist. The team at the beginning features Kristen Scott Thomas and Emilio Estevez, who are both, I would say, good, but it's hard to talk about them because they are such a small part of the film.
I legit think Kristen Scott Thomas is great, and the two men she is given. And she's another one that you wouldn't really think of as like a spy character, which is, isn't that how you want to cast real life spies? Like to be unexpected. So Kristen Scott Thomas kind of makes sense. But I think there's something so, I don't know, honorable about her presence and competent about her presence. You could definitely see her as being an effective spy just because that's how she carries herself. In a lot of ways, they're not made to be lovers or anything, but I think she has tons of chemistry with Tom Cruise when they're just like fake snogging while they're hiding for the rest of the spies. So we're like, I want to investigate that relationship. I wanted them to fuck. That's what I'm saying. It would have been interesting.
Zach, we're just out there saying it. Yeah, no, she's great. She's just one of those people that like, I feel like she's one of those people who just, if you look through her career, it's a lot of like nothing. But then when she gets the right roles, she's very good in them. And you like very much enjoy her when you're given something good to do. Which unfortunately for, actresses in their 60s is not very often. So you get stuck out there trying to figure out like what your next role is, which is why you sometimes get stuck being in movies nobody wants to see. I think there's only a couple more people that we're talking about. Henry Cesarni is basically Eugene Kittredge. He's the guy from Mission Impossible, the team from CIA.
I don't know him from anything else. I just think he does movies that I don't watch.
I don't.
Think he's incredible in this.
I looked it up. I don't think he. I think he's in movies. I just don't think he does anything anyone's ever seen.
Okay. Yeah.
Like he's definitely.
That's an IMDb faces I've ever seen. I can tell in your eyes now when you're just staring at IMDb.
I'm saying his Wikipedia. He's in.
Okay.
He's in the film Clear and Present Danger. He's in the Ice Storm from Ang Lee. He's in the remake of the Pink Panther.
I have seen the remake of the Pink Panther. Do I remember anything about it now?
He also feels like a guy who just plays like leadership in a spy organization, leadership in a government organization, a lot of films. Because he also plays Director McCready in The A-Team. Yeah. And most importantly, he is in the film Remember, directed by Adam Egan, starring Christopher Plummer.
I legit just watched that, and I have no idea who he is in this movie because you made me watch this.
That's why I brought it up. I guess
he's the son. Is he his son in that? That appears at the end. Okay, that makes sense. He's I guess because he's not a familiar face to me, that just had to click. But I think this is a specific archetype in a spy movie franchise, which is like not the villain, but like a conflict. So it's just like an asshole. The rule follower, the asshole that's making the life hard for the spy, but he's still like on the right side, just accidentally not supporting the right side.
He's a pain in the ass, but he's not an evil character. And he also he's one of those people, and I think the reason you don't remember him is because there are probably hundreds of people that look like this dude. He just has like kind of very typical like American football star, top of his class, strong jawed, like looks like he kind of has the generic hero look, but like probably isn't good enough an actor to start being a full-on lead, which is why he plays, the head of the CIA and the director of this organization, the director of that organization. And supposedly he was announced to be in Mission Impossible 7. So he should be the third character in this movie to come back if that was to happen.
God, sounds great. Because I say one of my favorite scenes is their dinner table conversation. I think his energy just matches perfectly for what Tom Cruise was doing. Like he saw what Tom Cruise was bringing to that table, and that wild-eyed energy is like, I'm going to like double it and heighten it more and like threaten your farming family and say crazy shit. And it's just like lovely. He just gets to go around and say like intimidating but kind of bizarre lines throughout this whole movie. It's a delight. It's just honestly probably my favorite performance in the movie. And once again, is it good? That's up for debate, but it's just wildly enjoyable.
And it's a scene that ends with Tom Cruise throwing explosive bubble gum at a gigantic fish tank, which I'd like to talk for a second. This is like a fish tank in a restaurant, but when it is exploded, it releases enough water and animals that is the equivalent of like the largest tank in an aquarium. Like if you went to the New England Aquarium and blew up the biggest tank in the middle of the entire thing, the one that has like several stories, that's how much water comes out of that restaurant. They took some creative license with how much water came out of that fish tank, because it was definitely way more than was actually in that fish tank that went all over.
Also, is that an overreaction on Ethan Hunt's part? Like, this guy thinks I like murdered my team. He probably could have got away later or figured this out or even tried to discuss it with things later. But he stays like, this guy is a fuckhole who like is falsely accused me, so I'm just gonna blow up everything around me to get away. Seems like he could have had a more chill way to get out of this than blowing up an aquarium.
I think he made the choice in that movie, which is a scene that often happens in spy movies, where the spy realizes that the other people around him have already made up their mind about what's going on. Yeah. So it's regardless of what he's going to say, they believe he's a traitor and they're going to take him in. I do want to talk about one last performance because I think this performance is actually quite good, which is Vanessa Redgrave as Max, the
great.
arms dealer. Vanessa Redgrave, legend. Just really talented, really funny, also really good in this film. Very funny, very witty. Seems to really understand like the genre of film she's in. Like she might be the best performance in the entire film. She's just really
in another instance of this movie upending your expectations. Like they play with it. They do. I teased you earlier, but they do call Max a he early in the film. They do everything to lead up to you thinking it's a male.
Yeah.
And someone probably a little more sketchy is what you would assume too of being an arms dealer. Someone definitely greasier. Instead, you get this very kind of prim British, classical actress as the arms dealer. Not at all what you would expect for that. So it's just Brian De Palma and everyone else just playing with the expectations throughout. It's like the 8th example we have given for that and how they do the opposite of what you expect. And it's fantastic.
Yeah, really good twist, and she's Vanessa Redgrave. She knows how to deliver a performance that just really works in the film, and she's just incredibly, incredibly interesting.
Here's what's really frustrating about it to me, though, is that I feel like they completely set her up for a return. I feel like the final scene where they let her off the hook, she talks to what's his carriage, and they basically make a deal or set the idea that they're going to make a deal, which is I'm sure I have something that you'll be interested in, some information that will be good for you instead because of the legal loopholes that she'll be able to fight and say let's make a deal to where it all makes it seem like they just want her to come back and be part of the next plot or a future plot line. And they kind of bring her back because in Fallout, not bring her back, but Vanessa Kirby, I believe, is a relative to Max in Fallout. So it's instead of getting Vanessa Redgrave, let's get another Vanessa just to kind of keep the bloodline going rather than actually bringing Max back. It's maybe there's scheduling conflicts or the story just went away, but I feel like there was intention for her to be a continual through line throughout the series. Because why else have that scene? Why else have the explanation that she's going to be out on the loose?
I know it does really make you think that she's going to become an asset to the team, and that just never happens. Yes, the Vanessa Kirby character from Fallout is the daughter of Max, which I'm not gonna lie,
it's really great. You forgot she was in it.
I forgot she was Max's daughter. I don't remember. I didn't forget Vanessa Kirby was in the film,
and she is in 7, as far as I know. So they are now deciding that this was a good thing, that they should keep going with an arms dealer played by Vanessa. And then they'll replace her with another Vanessa after that. Vanessa Hudgens will play in Mission Impossible 9.
Please, dear Fred, no. It's so weird, too, because I feel like you should have brought Vanessa Redgrave back because she's so good.
Well, she's at 7. What if you get to see a mom-daughter team up on trying to sell some fucking nuclear arms? You have to imagine that Vanessa Kirby and Vanessa Redgrave would have incredible chemistry too.
I think Vanessa Redgrave would have incredible chemistry with anyone. She has really great chemistry with Ethan in this film.
Am I googling that she's still alive? Yes. Okay, she's still alive. She's 84.
The character is dead though.
How do you know? They say in Fallout.
Yeah. That's how the daughter becomes her arms dealer.
You know who else we thought was dead? John Voight, and he wasn't. So who knows? This is a spy franchise. It was all she faked her death and she'll come back for 7. I believe it. So.
Oh, so this is actually interesting. The character was originally written for a man.
Yeah,
and that's why it's called Max. And then basically Tom Cruise was like, "You should get Vanessa Redgrave," and they just left it as Max because they're like, "It's a pseudonym. Who cares?"
And if it was a man, that would just come off as
that's interesting.
Yeah, just part of the plotting. It probably wouldn't have the spark and the chemistry that Vanessa Redgrave could bring to it.
I also love how Vanessa Redgrave is she has that, she's so proper British lady, but who also happens to be an international arms dealer trying to acquire a list of code names. There's just a great dichotomy of this you think of an arms dealer and you think like disgusting, bearded, slimy, greasy person. And then you get like Vanessa Redgrave who's like, let's have tea, but also like, if you don't give me this, I'll kill you.
Also, on the train sequence at the end, it has some real like British exasperated impatience. It's like, why is it out again? Can you just get this done? It's just like
it's a great moment. She's like mad that the internet connection won't stay up. Very, very enjoyable.
Yeah.
Let's see. We talked about the characters. Talked about the story. Do you have anything you'd like to talk to and jump to final thoughts?
I mean, since I just brought up the train sequence, I do want to talk about the train sequence.
Yeah, let's talk about the train sequence.
A lot has been talked about the break-in of of the CIA. I'm thinking, thankfully, it's a very famous scene, and I do think it's like perfect. We briefly touched on it. It's great. Chain sequence, I think, is under discussed. So I think it is also very exciting because you know what I find cooler than climbing down a big building. I keep calling a big building just to be rude to it. Didn't probably say that the Burj Khalifa. Is what's cool is a helicopter and a fucking train tunnel. Now this has, where there's a little more CGI to it than the actual physical effects that you would see. I assume, maybe I'm all wrong in this. A lot more physical, but I assume there's a lot more visual effects going into the craft of this, but still just like stellar. I like watching a fucking helicopter go following a high-speed train in a tunnel. But what also makes the scene work is what we already talked about, the Brian De Palma choreography of it all. There's just, have so much information that you're giving of where every character is in any moment, where Kittredge is walking on the train, where is John Voight's character, where is Vanessa Redgrave and Ving Rhames, and you always understand where the movement is. Why are they moving for specific? What are they even thinking about or concerned about in any moment in that scene? You're fully aware of what is happening because there's them trying to download the knock list. Ving Rhames trying to make sure they can't get the knock list. Kittredge, following Ethan Hunt, but also looking for. But we find out also looking for John Voight's character that they kind of been given information about the unknowns that we were given kind of coming to play with it. We aren't brought Ethan Hunt until we want to see him because that's the mass sequence. So the lack of information given there being put to effect. And it's just a perfect manipulation of that scene and perfect control of the information and the details.
Well, trains are great places to set scenes where people are looking for something or looking for someone because they have this really cool aspect of velocity forward because the train is moving forward, but also like it's hard to hide in a train. So at any time that you can manage to hide somebody on a train, it's always becomes an interesting hunt. There's like a lot of films that use trains to great effect, and this one also does it. They do like a really cool job. Setting it up so everybody is always like a little bit ahead of each other until they finally all converge at the end. And then you have the sequence. I actually like the stuff on the train when they're looking for each other a lot more than I like the whole on the helicopter thing. I think that gets a little.
I love the helicopter shit.
It's very enjoyable. It's very enjoyable and fun, but it's a lot goofier because of it's got like very 90s looking CGI. It very much reminds me of when we were talking about Air Force One and the weird like plane flips over each other and the one like jumps in front of the missile. I do think you brought up something that's really cool, which is that this film starts something with the Mission Impossible franchise, which is the idea of the gadgets. Like from the first scene when Tom Cruise is wearing a fake mask to cover him up so they think he's somebody else. Even the glasses that he puts on that allows Kittredge to see that Phelps is still alive. This one uses less of them than some of the other ones, but also still kind of, plants that flag, plants that little hint that this is going to be part of the franchise going forward.
Then handed it to John Woo and said, "Go fucking nuts, Woo. Use 800 masks throughout this whole movie." But I would defend the helicopter sequence because I think the silliness is probably why I love it. Because in a way, it just makes it feel more quaint compared to the other ones. The silliness of it, a little more nostalgic in a way, because it's the less realisticness of it just makes it more escapism for a little bit. It's like, when else am I going to see a helicopter chasing down a train? This is ridiculous, and I love it. It puts you in another world in a way, and you get like the John Voight, who's this old asshole in a parachute suit, like flying down a train, and it kind of battles with the unexpected legacy. And it's thrilling. It's exciting. And trains are cool, and helicopters are cool, and tunnels are cool. And you put all three of that shit together, and it's great.
It is really crazy.
That should just be my letterbox review. Trains are cool, helicopters are cool, and tunnels are cool. And a review.
You should do it.
Someone hire me. Yeah.
Yeah. I actually do think it's really cool when the helicopter is inside the tunnel. That's some real craziness when they have to pull that off. Do you have final thoughts on Mission Impossible?
I do want to know, where do you think it ranks on your Mission Impossible rankings? I think we got to do this with all the franchise ones as we move forward. Now, we haven't seen all of them for the ones we're going through, but doing the best. Do you think this is top tier, mid tier, bottom tier, at least?
Let me grab my Mission Impossible rankings, and I will tell you that. Why don't you go first?
Yeah. Well, because I think I'm adjusting it, and this might be Fallout to me. I think got hurt because it did seem like they were continuing what Nation set up. It was the first one, you had the same director. And I love Fallout, but it was just less exciting to me because you've already seen what Christopher McQuarrie could bring to it. It is a little samey in that sense, just with new stunts, new things. My one is Rogue Nation, and it might be my favorite action.
Interesting.
I think this might be my number 2 now. Because I would probably go this, or I would go Rogue Nation, and my 1, Fallout Ghost Prep. 3 and then 2, which is normal. If anyone doesn't have 2 at last, then you're just out on it.
Yeah, 2 is last, and it's not close. Like 2 is a star and a half behind.
It's the only bad.
That I agree on that. I'll be honest, it's been a very long time, but I'm going to go with my current rankings. I did not like Rogue Nation that much.
You're insane. It's a perfect action.
I liked it, but I didn't like it as much as the other ones. I would put Rogue Nation at 5. I think I would put
5. Jesus Christ!
I would put Ghost.
3. You need to show with Philip Seymour Hoffman. Everyone just giving 3 too much credit because at PSH.
Again, Zach, I was trying to tell you during this. I have not. I was going to rewatch it. I have not watched this movie since 2015. It's been 6 years. I know these rankings are not accurate. I'm just going off what I have. I can give you a more.
I'm not worried. 5 was your last, and you only said, "Oh yeah, 2's last," just to abide by.
No, 2 is 100% last. You can go look. I can send you a picture.
Yeah. Okay.
You can even go look it up. I guess I would say that 3 is at number 4. 4 is at number 3.
That's so confusing.
I know it is. Mission Impossible 3 is my number 4. Ghost Protocol is my number 3. And then I did like Fallout more than Mission Impossible. I don't know about that. Might change on rewatch. I would say this one at 2 and then Fallout at 1. But there's I'm going to be honest. I've seen Fallout recently and I've seen this one recently. Any of the other ones could go all over the place. I assume that 2 will stay last, but the other ones are all like half a star apart and could really switch very quickly.
Yeah. It seems like I'm probably a bigger fan of the franchise, as a whole. All these I've listed low, higher on, and really love. This is my action franchise of choice.
That's fair. Because I think if you look at my list, the movies I like are in the 3.5 to 4 star range, and the movie I don't like is at 2 stars. I don't have. I think
I might have gave Rogue Nation a 10 out of 10 on my last watch.
That's fair.
Yeah. You say 5 star, I say 10 because I'm smarter and don't think halves deserve recognition.
Zach, I don't know if you know this because you are a teacher and you should know this. 4.5 out of 5 is the same thing as 9 out of 10. There's no difference between those.
Why are we going to halves? Why do we need to break down the whole numbers? Can you just call it a 9 out of 10? Halves just seems like I can't make up my mind. Is it a 4 or 5? I don't know. Or you can just say it's a 9 out of 10.
I wish you could do halves and do it out of 10. I would like 9, and I would like to be delineated between 9.5 and 9. I think that would be cool.
I tried to for a while when I was doing music reviews, I tried to do it 100-point scale, and I was at 96, and that's just bad shit. I was doing that for movies for a little bit too.
I actually think the biggest thing that
becomes meaningless.
I think the biggest thing that people realize is over time is that the reason we do 5 stars and half stars is because the larger the scale becomes, the harder it is to delineate between movie A and movie B. it just becomes more complicated. Especially when you get to like the 100-point scale, you're like, all right, well, that's a 97. Is this a 98 or a 96? And it just becomes like your whole scale becomes stupid and pointless. But yes, Mission Impossible. I will say my final thoughts for the franchise are that I think this movie does a really good job setting up where it's to go, even though they give a bunch of different directors a shot at the franchise. They set up the character of Ethan Hunt really well. They set up the idea of the gadgets and all the really masks and stuff that Hunt's going to do. They set up the idea of like the one big action sequence, or in some cases 2 or 3. But I think they do a really good job setting up the basic ideas of what a Mission Impossible film is going to be and why you should continue to come back. And they randomly take like 4 years off to do 2. And then they take like 6 years off and do 3. And then they actually take like a shockingly long time between these movies for a franchise.
Yeah. But I think my thoughts on why I have this one so high is because I think it stands out so much more unique than the rest. It can stand as an individual film more than the rest all being part of a franchise. And I think that's where a lot of my enjoyment comes from. And it's a lot more altruistic in a lot of ways. Like the other ones, they wanted to be a director's kind of franchise, but this one seems mostly connected to Brian De Palma more than the other ones that are so directly connected to their director.
Well, hot take, Brian De Palma is a better director than the people who came after him in this franchise. Or at least has a more unique or has a more unique style of a director. Like, a Brian De Palma film. Because like I don't know what happened with John Woo in the second one. That was kind of a mess.
John Woo definitely has a real style to him. It's just not a style that's as good as Brian De Palma's.
That's fair. But then you get into stuff like then you get into people like Abrams, Bird, and McQuarrie, who are very competent directors, but I don't think any of them has a particularly unique style that you would identify from film to film.
Honestly, because that's so early in Abrams' film career, I think 3 seems TV-ish in all other ways.
Well, I think a lot of Abrams' films seem TV-ish at times.
TV-ish.
Even though I like most of them. I probably like all but one of Abrams' films, but like as a director he's a workman-like dude. He fits franchises and he just kind of pumps out something that is highly commercial and productive for like a wide base of people. With that being said, we'd like to thank everyone for listening to our wonderful episode about Mission Impossible. We will be back next week to continue it, and we're going a bit weird and wacky. When we sat down to plan this month out, we knew that we had to do the major franchises. Zach's already spoiled the fact that we're doing Bond, but there are like other major ones. We wanted to do one that's a little bit interesting. So we're going to do Spy Kids next week. It's the only one of these that's really based with children. I've never seen it. I'm going to have to watch it before then. It's going to be interesting to see.
I'm so interested in your take.
I'm also interested. I'm fascinated in some of those to see like all the discussion we had with Mission Impossible and the franchise and what came before it and like all the things. I wonder any of that stuff will be relevant for Spy Kids.
Hey, ready for something you don't know, because I've talked about how much I love this movie. I have not seen it since I was 14 years old.
So there's a total chance that Zach Ford does the thing I did in musicals once. I was like, yeah, I like Les Mis. Let's put it on the schedule. And then I rewatched it and was like, this is trash. But
I remember being real weird shit that I ate up, and I'm excited to watch it. All right. We're going to talk about his marriage, the kid's marriage to Megan Trainor for an hour. That's our whole show.
This sounds like a terrible idea. All right, we'll see what happens. Thank you everyone for listening. Drop us likes, drop us comments, drop us subscribes. Enjoy the content. Tell us if you differ our opinions. Tell us what you like. Drop your Mission Impossible rankings if you're on the YouTubes down in the comments. We'd love to see them. With that being said, we will see you next week. Peace out.